Could a king still come?
One of the most common causes of conflict in the Trigg household, and specifically with my kids, is music. And especially the songs that get stuck in their head on repeat over and over and over again. My 3-year-old Lenny loves the Shrek soundtrack. And I mean, like, loves it. Her favorite song is All-Star, Smash Mouth, like, hey now, you're an all, and like, she just loves it. She sings it all the time. The problem is, though, my 5-year-old Alex hates the Shrek soundtrack. And I mean, hates it. And so my 3-year-old, all she has to say is, hey now, and Alex is like, stop! And there's just this spiraling cycle of conflict amongst the Trigglets. Someone last night was like, you have triplets? I was like, no, it feels like it sometimes, but the Trigglets. It happens so many times, songs stuck in their head and conflict from it this week, that I looked up, how do songs get stuck in your head? I have to nip this in the bud. And so I started looking it up. And one thing I learned this week, did you know only 90% of people get songs stuck in their head? Like, there is 10% of the room who are blessed and highly favored from the Lord that don't know what it's like to have a song stuck in their head. I had someone last night, like, I don't know what it's like to have a song stuck in my head. I was like, you're so blessed. I hope you don't take that for granted. And if that's you, the Lord has blessed you. I did some research on songs stuck in your head, and I read one study of 3,000 participants, and they identified the most likely song to get stuck in your head is Bad Romance by Lady Gaga. That little factoid I just shared with you cost me a lot of sanity this week. I read that study, and then I had that song stuck in my head so much this week. In fact, yesterday my daughter, she was doing a craft, and I just hear her at the kitchen table, rah, 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 rah. And I'm like, Charlotte, do you know what song that is? She's like, I have no idea. And I was like, you don't have, she's like, I have no idea what I'm singing. I have had it stuck in my head so much that she has heard the tune and she's getting it stuck in her head. Why am I saying all this? Because I suffered this week having these songs stuck in my head, and I just wanted to share that with all of you. No, I'm just kidding. I heard someone this week describe the book of Judges as boring. It's like, it's such a boring book. And I was like, how dare you? And they're like, no. Not boring as in like snooze boring. Boring as in it's like a song that gets stuck in your head and it's just on repeat. And I'm like, okay, you're right, but don't use boring. The book of Judges can feel like a song that's on repeat. There's the same cycle over and over and over again. Israel would experience peace, and they would use that peace and they would wander after idols. God would see it and he would let the natural repercussions of that take their course. And then enemies would come in and would oppress them and beat them down and make life really hard for the Israelites. They would cry out to God. God would send a judge. The judge would come and deliver Israel. They would experience peace while the judge is alive. The judge would die. They would still have a little bit of peace. They'd use that peace. They would descend into idolatry, and then they would get oppressed, and the cycle is over and over and over again. And it's a song that keeps going, except every time it gets worse. We are in chapter 6 today, and it's already the 5th time we've seen the same cycle happen. And the cycle this week takes us to the Israelites and takes us to a man named Gideon. We're going to pick his story up in Judges chapter 6, starting in verse 11, which says these words. The angel of the Lord came and sat down under the oak tree in Ophrah that belonged to Joash the Abiezrite, where his son Gideon was threshing wheat in a winepress to keep it from the Midianites. When the angel of the Lord appeared to Gideon, he said, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." "Pardon me, my lord," Gideon replied. "If the Lord is with us, why has all this happened to us? Where are all his wonders that our ancestors told us about when they said, 'Did not the Lord bring us up out of Egypt?' But now the Lord has abandoned us and given us into the hand of Midian." The Lord turned to him and said, "Go in the strength you have and save Israel out of Midian's hand. Am I not sending you?" All right, so we're introduced to Gideon. And we're introduced to him while he's threshing his wheat. It's a very typical household responsibility, but he's in a wine press, which is a very atypical location for that responsibility. You don't thresh wheat in a wine press. You make wine in a wine press. The whole purpose of threshing wheat was to separate the grain from the chaff. And the easiest way to do that would be to use a tub of some sort to thrash the sheaves against the sides, to knock the heads free and allow the wind to blow away the chaff. And so these threshing floors would be built outdoors. And they would often be built in higher places so that they could just beat the sheaves, allow the kernels of the grain to fall to the ground, and then the wind would take the chaff, would take the stuff that you no longer need and would just blow it away. So these threshing floors, you can look up what they would be. They'd often be like elevated spots, highly visible, where people would beat their grain so that they could have the ingredients to make their bread and other food. A wine press, however, was two parts. There was one part where the grapes would be and you'd step on them and you'd crush them, and then the juice would flow down into like a basin or a tub. Oftentimes it would be enclosed under the ground to protect it from the elements. And so a wine press was often built into the ground to hide it from any of the other kind of elements or things blowing into the wine or animals and that kind of thing. And so Gideon is under the ground level to thresh his wheat. He's in a wine press threshing wheat. Gideon is in one of the most inconvenient, nonsensical places for the task at hand. Why is Gideon in a wine press threshing his wheat? Well, the opening of the chapter tells us. We're told that Gideon is afraid. The opening of chapter 7 says, the Israelites again did evil in the eyes of the Lord. And so they were delivered into the hands of the Midianites, and we're told for 7 years, the Israelites would sow their seed, they would plant their crops, they would do all the work, and every single year at harvest time, the Midianites would come and they'd go grocery shopping for free. They would take all the Israelites' food, and then they would take it back and they would live off the Israelites' food. 7 years, the Midianites took everything from the Israelites. So after 7 years of this, Gideon is sick and tired of losing all of his hard work. So he's hiding in a wine press, threshing his wheat. And while he's doing that, in a spot he never should have been, we're told an angel of the Lord is under the tree, the oak tree, appears to him and gives him like the greatest greeting ever. The angel shows up and is like, "You mighty warrior, the Lord is with you." Can you imagine Gideon hearing that? You're like hiding. You are actively hiding because of your fear. You're under the surface. You're in the wrong place because of fear. And a messenger of the Lord's like, "You warrior, God is with you." You'd be like, "What? Me? A warrior? I'm hiding in a liquor store trying to make bread. What are you talking about? Warrior. I'm terrified. I'm scared. I almost fell over from you just greeting me." At least in my imagination, that's how I pictured the scene going. But this scene, it's not just slightly comedic and very ironic. I think there's a full word for all of us in this day and in this age, in this scene. On the one hand, Gideon is scared and terrified driven by fear to a nonsensical place. And on the other hand, a messenger from God is sent and calls him a mighty warrior and reminds him that God is with him. And if we just take a step back, hold those two truths up and ask ourselves what's going on here, we would have to admit one of these people is wrong. One of them is wrong. Somebody isn't seeing things correctly or living according to reality. One is the messenger from God, and one is Gideon. Now, who are you banking on being wrong in this moment? God or Gideon? Did the angel go to the wrong address? Or is Gideon not seeing things properly? And I just want that scene to remind us of a few things. And the first is this: fear and sin distort our perspective on reality. Because of the sin of the Israelites and because of Gideon's fear, he was driven to a place he never should have been. And that fear and that sin distorted how he was viewing things, distorted how he was viewing himself. And when we're in the wrong place, doing the wrong things for a long enough time, like Gideon, we lose sight of who we are, and we lose sight of whose we are. The second thing I think this scene can show us is that when God sees us, he sees us differently. Like, we might be hiding. We might be underground, but when God sees us, he sees us as we are designed, created, and called to be. God didn't see Gideon the way that Gideon saw himself. God saw Gideon as he was called to be. Do you know today that God sees you better than you see yourself? Do you know today that you look better in God's eyes than you do in your own eyes? And do you know that God believes in you more than you believe in yourself? God believes in you more than you believe in him. Is there something today that you're not seeing properly? Is your perspective on something distorted? The third thing I think this opening scene shows us is that God was with Gideon long before Gideon was aware of it. And maybe today that could be your reality too. God is with you. No matter where you are, what you're up to, why you're there, God is with you. When the angel calls Gideon, Gideon's like, what? Me? Pardon me? What are you talking about? And they have this kind of back and forth, and Gideon kind of puts God to the test in not overly helpful ways, but it leads to this moment where the messenger from God gives Gideon a call. And the angel says to Gideon, you have to go. You are called to go. And then the messenger says these great words, says, go in the strength you have. Go in the strength you have, for the Lord is calling you. And for all of us, when we are called, it's to go in the strength we have, not the strength we think we need. When God calls us to go, he's like, you just go with what you got, I'll take care of the rest. And that's still how he operates. When God calls us to something, he calls us as we are, not as we think we need to be. Go in the strength you have. Last week, while looking at the story of Deborah and Jael, we did a bit of an adjacent field trip because it was Mother's Day, and I talked a little bit about Mother's Day. And I want to do something similar this morning. I want to do an adjacent field trip for a couple of minutes, okay? It's related to the text, but it's also kind of a scenic route moment. And I just want to take a moment for our church family to talk about calling. Because Gideon's called here in the strength he has to a task. And I just want to remind every one of us that the Lord still calls us to go in the strength we have. The Lord calls us to all kinds of things, but he calls everyone to get involved. One of the earliest names for the church, ecclesia, was the called out ones. The ones who are called out and called to something. He calls his people to get involved into every occupation and vocation. He calls people into medicine and healthcare. And he calls people into education. He calls people into the trades. He calls people to staying at home. He calls people into IT. He calls people into finance. He calls people into all kinds of opportunities, engineering and consulting and on and on and on. But the Lord calls people. And the Lord calls some people into vocational ministry. It wasn't that long ago where there used to be a lot of talk and a lot of invitations to join pastoral ministry or to become a missionary, an international worker somewhere. It doesn't happen a ton anymore. But I'm reminded of the Lord's words when Jesus said, "Ask the Lord of the harvest to send workers into the field, for the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few." And those are the very words God used to call me into what I'm doing. And so I just want to say these words to you, church family. If you're here and if you've ever felt called to vocational ministry, I just want to invite you to a night with Pastor James and myself where we can explore God's call in your life. We've named it a night, we've named it Called or Curious. And so if you just text Called to the church office number, you'll get a link to an event. We just want to pay attention if the Lord might be calling some of our family into vocational ministry. As a church, we've been talking about launching 10 missional expressions in the next 10 years. We did one this last year, which means we need 9 in the next 9. And we're also a part of the Alliance Canada, which is a movement, a family of churches. And as a family of churches, we want to double our reach in Canada. As the Alliance, we want to reach 1% of our nation. And that means that our family of churches, that's a little bit over 400 churches across the country, needs to become well over 800 churches, which means we need a lot of people to lean in. And we think if the Lord's going to do this, then the Lord's going to call people to it. And we just want to see if our church family has any part of that. And so we want to lean all the way in to this. And so I invite you, text Called. If that's you, if you've ever wondered or maybe felt that call to vocational ministry, we're going to do 2 different nights, June 1st, June 18th. You'll get that information there though. It's just a chance to see if the Lord might be stirring and calling some people into vocational ministry, because we want to help with education, we want to help with experience, we want to help with mentorship, and we want to help with formation. So there's a chance for you. Back to Gideon. From this encounter with the Lord, Gideon's called. And after he gets this call to go in the strength you have, we read about Gideon saying, "Lord, I'll do it, but you have to prove it to me. Do this. Make this thing wet and make the ground all dry." And the Lord does, and he's like, that was pretty good. Okay, now do the opposite. And there's this back and forth kind of testing. There's a lot in there, way more than we have time for. I counted it out. If I just read the story of Gideon, it would take 20 minutes. So that's a long time. So Gideon does this testing with the Lord. Don't have all the time to go all the way into it, but I just want to say this. Gideon kept asking for a sign when the Lord had already given his word. And when the Lord gives his word, we don't need some kind of magic trick to confirm it. When God speaks to us, it's been my observation, it's been my experience pastorally, biblically, experientially. When God speaks to us, what we need in response most of the time is not verification or clarification. We need the courage to go based on what we've received. Gideon knew what God had called him to. And he kept trying to put the Lord to the test, but Gideon knew. And if the Lord's speaking to us, most of the time we know what the next step is. We might not know what the second one is, but we know what the next one is. We often don't need more clarification or verification. We just need courage to take the step to what God might be calling us to. Gideon knew what God had asked him to do, and eventually he went, and this is how the story is told to us, Judges chapter 7. It says, early in the morning, Jerubbaal, that is Gideon, and all his men camped at the spring of Harod. The camp of Midian was north of them in the valley near the hill of Moreh. The Lord said to Gideon, you have too many men. I cannot deliver Midian into their hands, or Israel would boast against me. My own strength has saved me. Now announce to the army, anyone who trembles with fear may turn back and leave Mount Gilead. So 22,000 men left, while 10,000 remained. But the Lord said to Gideon, there's still too many men. Take them down to the water. I will thin them out for you there. If I say this one shall go with you, he shall go. But if I say this one shall not go with you, he shall not go. So Gideon took the men down to the water. There the Lord told him, separate those who lap the water with their tongues as a dog laps from those who kneel down to drink. 300 of them drank from cupped hands, lapping like dogs. All the rest got down on their knees to drink. The Lord said to Gideon, with the 300 men that lapped, I will save you and give the Midianites into your hands. Let all the others go home. So Gideon sent the rest of the Israelites home, but kept the 300 who took over the provisions and trumpets of the others. So the scene is this. Later on, we're told there was at least 135,000 Midianite murderers, okay? 135,000 Midianite soldiers. At the beginning, there was 32,000 Israelite soldiers. And God's like, Gideon, you got too many. Probably not the instructions or the explanation that Gideon wanted from God. Like, you know you're in one when you're outnumbered 4-1, and God's like, you got too many people. You got too many people. But God explains why. He's like, if you go to battle like this at 4-1, you're going to take the credit. You're going to take the credit. I know what's going to happen. And so God's like, Gideon, just ask if anyone's scared. Now you go stand in front of 32,000 people who are outnumbered 4-1 and say, hey, any of you scared? And then 22,000 of them say, yeah, me. It's like, okay, you guys can go home. Imagine how they must have felt. Like, sweet, all right, like, let's go. Like, that would have been like such a relief for them. 22,000 soldiers go home. There's 10,000 people left. That's a 13-1 ratio. 13-1 ratio, and God goes to Gideon, and he's like, you know, Gideon, you still have too many. And Gideon's like, no way, what a coincidence. I was thinking the exact same thing, God. Like, no. And he's like, what do you mean? We just lost 22,000 people. We're outnumbered 13-1. God's like, too many. Go down to the river, to the spring. I'll thin them out for you a little bit more. And gives them this water instruction that basically resulted, if a man goes down and drinks from the stream like that, they went home. If they took water, cupped it, and then drank it, they could stay. And so the Lord thins them out, and out of those remaining 10,000 people, 9,700 of them are sent home. Now, I don't know what they would have felt like. Like, would they have been like, sweet, now we're outnumbered? Or would they have been like, oh, I wasn't scared. It's like, you should have been. But they weren't scared. And they go home. And there's 300 men plus Gideon left. 300 against an army of at least 135,000 people. But it was 300 people who had their heads up. And God could do something extraordinary with them. It was a 1 to 450 ratio. That's quite the ratio. That's like me versus this section. And, I like my chances. No, I'm just kidding. I see Andrew and Kevin and Austin and Trent. I don't have a hope. I can't take any of them. But it's like 1 to a 450 ratio. And it's like, all right, now we can go. If you're tracking the numbers from the beginning to this moment, 99.06% or 31,700 of the 32,000 soldiers have gone home, and they left behind their provisions and their instruments with the army. Verse 16, it says this, dividing the 300 men into 3 companies, he placed trumpets and empty jars in the hands of all of them, with torches inside. So not only are they outnumbered 450 to 1, Gideon takes away their weapons. He takes away their weapons, and what does he do? He replaces them with pottery and with trumpets. And not even like the brass trumpets that Pastor Dave plays, it's a shofar. Like, I have one of those things. Do you want to know what I have never once thought with that? What a weapon. It's a ram's horn, and it's empty and hollow, and you tap it hard enough and it breaks. And they are armed with some pottery and with some torches and a shofar. And he's like, all right, now you got what you need. With God's call and with God's provision and with the faithful obedience of his people, God can do anything. Anything. This is how Judges 7 tells the story. Gideon and the 300 men with him reached the edge of the camp at the beginning of the middle watch, just after they had changed the guard. They blew their trumpets, broke the jars that were in their hands. The 3 companies blew the trumpets and smashed the jars, grasping the torches in their left hands and holding in their right hands the trumpet they were to blow. They shouted, "A sword for the Lord and for Gideon." While each man held his position around the camp, all the Midianites ran, crying out as they fled. When the 300 trumpets sounded, the Lord caused the men throughout the camp to turn on each other with their swords. So Gideon was sent in the strength he had to save Israel. Did you see what the Lord's battle plan was? Blow your shofar, break the jars, show off the torches. I mean, it sounds like a little kid's birthday party, right? Break some dishes, make a lot of noise, and show off some candles. And with this little kid's birthday party battle plan, they went and they descended. But you play the scene out. Imagine what that must have been like. You're outnumbered 450 to 1. You're armed with a candle and a shofar and a clay jar. You and 99 of your friends are crawling up, overlooking an army that is at least the size of Okotoks and Lethbridge combined. And you and your 99 pals are like, I'm glad we got some birthday party supplies. Let's see how this goes. You make some noise. You show off your candle, and then they flee. They run. Did you notice in verse 22, it said the Lord caused the men to run? Like, as best as I can tell from this encounter, Israel didn't have to swing a single sword. A single shofar. They just had to show up. That's all they had to do. The Lord caused the enemy camp to go and descend into chaos. The men who stuck around, the men who were there, all they had to do was show up and use the breath in their lungs to make a shout unto the Lord. They had to go in the strength they had, for sure. They had to trust God, for sure. But God took care of the details. They just had to show up. Now, can you imagine what that must have been like? Can you imagine seeing that? How incredible it would have been. But then I started thinking, imagine being one of the 31,700 people who left. You thought you got the good deal. You're like skipping on your way home. And then your neighbor shows up and it was like, dude, it was 300 of us. You wouldn't believe it. It was crazy. And you start telling them the story. Can you imagine missing out on seeing that? Imagine seeing the deliverance of the Lord that would save your entire nation, and they missed it because of their fear. Like, I just can't imagine what that must have felt like to miss out on the adventure of seeing the Lord do the amazing thing right in front of them. Like, look what God did with 300 men plus Gideon, people who trusted in him and didn't let fear win. Look what the Lord did. And I think that moment brings us to this moment right now. We will have thousands of people with us this weekend at one of our FAC gatherings. What could God do with us if we didn't let fear win and we trusted him and went in the strength we had? Last weekend, we had 681 more people than we did a year ago. And I praise the Lord for that. I praise God for every single one of the 681 people that are here now that weren't here 52 weeks ago. And if you're here, you're one of those 681. I thank the Lord for you. I've been praying for you. I'd love to connect with you. I'd love for you to feel like this is your place. This is your home. But to all of us, to the thousands that will be gathering this weekend, one of the things Gideon shows us is the larger the army, the more at risk we are of engaging under false pretenses. Like, the story of Gideon makes it crystal clear. The Lord is far less interested in merely accumulating numbers. The Lord is interested in accumulating people who are full of faith, willing to go in the strength they have, and trusting God with the details. Like, this isn't just about collecting numbers and gathering. This is about us showing up in the strength we have, saying, Lord, I'll go. I'll go. It makes no sense, but I'll go because you see me. Will you go? Will you trust the Lord to go to the hard and dark places in our world with the strength you have? Like, friends, don't let fear win. Where is God calling you to go today? I've read through this story a lot, especially over the last couple of days. And one of the things I kept wondering was, how long was it before Gideon recognized the angel, the messenger of the Lord under the tree? Like, we're told the messenger of the Lord came and was hanging out, resting under the tree, while Gideon was like head down for fear, just doing his chore over and over again. How long was it until the messenger of the Lord was like, you mighty warrior, the Lord is with you? How long was that time period? How long was Gideon head down, working hard, hiding because of fear under the surface? All the while, God's messenger was right there. And then I was like, how long are we like that? Like, how long are we head down, working, hiding because of fear, in the wrong place for the wrong reasons, under the surface? All the while, the Lord's messenger is right beside us, wanting to speak to us and encourage us. Like, you may be here today and you can just totally identify with Gideon. You're like, I'm being buckled by fear. I'm overwhelmed by dread. I'm hiding out in a liquor store trying to make my bread so my neighbors don't steal it from me. Like, you might be somewhere you don't want to be, doing something you don't want to do because of fear or an enemy, because of the choices that someone's made before you, or because of the choices you've made. We might be living with a distorted perspective of reality, living in an upside down world. And if that's you, if anything I just said resonated with you, I just want to say to you today, lift up your eyes, you mighty warrior. The Lord is with you. The Lord is with you. Lift up your eyes. In the story of Gideon, we're told that God sent a messenger to hang out under a tree, to speak to Gideon and to affirm his identity and to reaffirm his calling, right? A messenger the Lord sent to hang out under that tree for Gideon. And if we fast forward several chapters in this book, we're going to see that the Lord sent another messenger, but instead of hanging out under a tree, he was pinned to the tree. And not just to save people for a temporary moment, but to save humanity forever. And just like the messenger in Gideon, when Jesus was sent to that tree, it was to remind you of who you are and to remind you of whose you are. You are loved, you are seen, you are called. You are his son and his daughter. You are his mighty warrior. And the messenger has come to say, God is with you. You might feel outnumbered 450 to 1. You might feel outnumbered 1,000 to 1. But the Lord is with you. And he's asking you to come in the strength that you have to him. He'll take care of the details. God comes to us and calls us long before we're brave so that he can become the reason we are brave. And you might be like, Kyle, you have no idea what I've done. You have no idea where I am. And I would just say, well, then praise the Lord. He doesn't call us on our faith. He doesn't call us based on our feelings. He doesn't call us based on our failings. He calls us because of who he is and what he has done. And our God brings dead things to life. And our God creates a way when there was no way. And our God sees you better than you see yourself. He sees you. And there's probably some dead things in the room today. There's probably some people hiding for fear today. There's probably some people that when the invitations come, like, are you scared? You're like, yeah, and you flee. But the God of Gideon is still calling you today. Not based on who you are, how strong you are, but based on who he is. And he's saying, won't you come in the strength that you have? I'll take care of the details. Today, it may feel like all that you have in this world are the materials for a kid's birthday party. Candles and some pottery, but friends, what I would say to you is whatever you have is everything you need. The God of Gideon is the God of First Alliance Church, and he's calling us to go in the strength we have, to trust him. And if he's calling you today, won't you respond? Church, go in the strength that you have so that you can experience the strength that he has. O mighty warriors of First Alliance Church, God is with you. Go in the strength that you have today and experience the strength that he has. Amen.